Hi, second grade. This week, we're going to be able to get back into one of our weekly texts. We're going to be learning about bridges again, and we're going to be reading the book called The Mackinac Bridge, which is written by Gloria Wellen. We're going to be working with this book all week. So today and tomorrow, I'm going to do a read aloud of the book, and then Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, you guys are going to be working on story structure. So we're going to be thinking more about what happens at the beginning, the middle, and the end. For today, though, I just want you to enjoy listening to the story. This is the cover of the book, The Mackinac Bridge by Gloria Wellen. Before we start reading, I want to go over two vocabulary words that are going to show up in this text. One of them is ferry boat. So right here is a picture of a ferry boat. A ferry boat is a type of boat that is used for commuting, for going from one place to another. And one thing that's special about a lot of ferry boats is that you can actually drive your car onto the ferry boat. So if you were somebody who lived on a part of like an island or something and you needed to go to work on the mainland, you could drive your car onto the ferry and the boat would drive you across the water. So there's going to be a ferry boat that takes place that is in this story. The other word that's going to show up in this story is the word strait. So a strait is a body of water. They're going to be talking about the Straits of Mackinac, which are real straits in the state of Michigan. And they are going to be talking about the ferry boat driving across the straits, as well as the bridge that is going to be built across the straits. So now that we've gone over those two vocabulary words, you're going to hear them in the text, but I'm going to start reading to you the first half of the book. If only his father, Captain Hansen, hadn't been so sad, Mark Hansen's 13th summer would have been the happiest summer of his life. Mark's dad was letting him help to line up the cars as they drove on to the Aurora. His dad was captain of a ferry boat that carried travelers across the Straits of Mackinac. This would be the Aurora's last year on the Straits. Mark had been riding the Aurora as long as he could remember. On hot summer days, Mark had sold lemonade to the long lines of drivers waiting to ride the ferry. In November, deer hunters by the hundreds of thousands traveled to the Upper Peninsula. Mark sold hot chocolate to the hunters who sometimes had to wait overnight to get onto one of the ferries. The Aurora was the smallest in a fleet of ferries carrying cars and passengers between Mackinac City and St. Ignacy. The ferry boats were like a road on the water, connecting Michigan's upper and lower peninsulas. From the decks of the Aurora, Mark could see what made him so happy and what made his father, Captain Hansen, so sad. He could see the bridge. I wonder why Captain Hansen is so sad about the bridge. Let's keep reading to find out. When it was finished in the fall, the bridge would be the longest bridge in the world. It would stretch an amazing 5 miles across the Strait of Mackinac. It took an hour across the straits in the Aurora. That didn't count the hour of waiting in line. It would take a car just 15 minutes to cross the bridge. The bridge would mean the end of the ferries, the end of the Aurora. How could Mark tell his father how much he loved the bridge, especially after what his older brother Luke had done? Mark was proud of the Aurora, as his dad was. He liked the way the gangplank clanged down with a growl. He liked the way the big mouth of the ferry swallowed up the cars. He liked the Aurora, but he loved the idea of a bridge, something that could go right through the air and bring things together. Mark had heard his father say, any bridge across the straits is sure to collapse. It will never hold up to 70 miles an hour winds and pounding from ice floes as tall as a 30-foot building. A lot of people shook their heads and said it couldn't be done. 3 years before, in 1954, when they had first begun to build the bridge, it looked like all the barges and derricks in the world were right out there in the lake. Luke said, there's a lot you can't even see. Divers are working hundreds of feet under the water, putting in piers to anchor the bridge. 2 of the piers are like empty buildings. 2 are like giant steel cans. They're going to fill the piers with concrete. Those big barges out there are mixing the concrete, nearly 1 million tons of the stuff. When the bridge is done, 2/3 of it will be underwater. Then Luke said something strange. It's next year I'm waiting for. What do you mean? Mark asked. Wait and see, Luke said. All summer, the barges made concrete. All summer, the concrete disappeared under the straits. Mark tried to imagine the divers down there with all their equipment. It must be like an underwater city, he thought. He wished he were there. When winter came, the gulls flew south. Bridge workers left. Ferries stopped their runs. 4 feet of ice sealed off the straits. The wind blew and the snow came down, and Mark thought about the underwater cities beneath the ice. The summer of 1955, the steel workers arrived. Luke said they're going to build 2 towers that will stretch 552 feet into the air. You'll be able to see them for miles around. I'm going to help them do it. I've got a job as a bridge man. That bridge is going to put me and the Aurora out of business, Captain Hansen said. How could you give them a hand? He stopped talking to Luke. Meal times were pretty quiet. Finally, Mr. Hansen said, I'm not sitting through another silent dinner. I understand why your dad, finally, Mrs. Hansen said, I'm not sitting through another silent dinner. I understand why your dad resents the bridge, but that bridge is going up and Luke might just as well be a part of it. Captain Hansen said, pass the bread, Luke. The silence was broken. Mark breathed a sigh of relief. He smiled, thinking his mom had been like a bridge herself, bringing his dad and Luke together. Luke had a special pair of gloves and a helmet to wear at work. He left each morning before Mark was awake. Mark watched the tower going up on the north side of the bridge. Luke was up on that tower, king of everything he saw. When the first tower was in place, an American flag was hoisted to the top. By October, flags were flying on both towers. In January, winter winds lashed the towers, pounding and shaking them. The towers stood firm. With their ice-coated ribs, Mark thought they looked like 2 frozen skeletons. Mark and Luke built their own bridge on the kitchen table. It'll be a suspension bridge, Luke said. The roadway the cars drive over will be held up by the cradle of cables. Mark made 2 towers from milk cartons. There's nothing in the middle, he said. How are they going to get the cables from the one tower to the other? Luke said, they'll build a catwalk, a temporary path to walk on while they spin the wires. Luke wrapped strands of wire around 2 of their mother's spools of thread. He told Mark to string wire from one end of the bridge to the towers and then to the other end of the bridge. More wires hung down to hold up the cardboard roadway. They had made a bridge. That is all we are going to read of this story for today. We'll finish the book tomorrow.